Before the violence, before the bruises, before the silence, there was light. Louise Moore was 8 when her life was split in two. Before that, her world was small but safe. She and her mom, Diane, lived in a little 2-bedroom cottage with chipped white paint and a crooked mailbox. It wasn't fancy. The roof leaked when it rained, and the heater made strange noises in winter. But it was home. Inside those peeling walls, Louise found magic. Her father, Robert, was a gentle man with a deep laugh that could fill a room. He was the kind of dad who never raised his voice, never forgot a birthday, and always knew how to fix broken things except the cancer inside him. "You're my little star," he used to say every single night. "And no matter what happens, I'll always be with you in every constellation you see." They would lie on the grass in the backyard, pointing up at Orion and the Big Dipper, his warm hand wrapped gently around hers. And when he got sick, he'd still smile when she came in, still ask her about her day, still call her his brightest light. And then one day, he didn't. Louise didn't fully understand death at 8, but she understood the silence that settled into the house afterward. It was a heavy kind of silence, the kind that sat at the dinner table and creaked in the floorboards. But through it all, Diane never let go. She dried her tears in secret and showed up for Louise like nothing had changed. She worked sunrise to midnight, cleaning schools during the day and serving food in diners by night. But she still managed to be mom. She still kissed scraped knees. She still helped with homework. She still made pancake Saturdays a tradition. And every Friday night, without fail, she brought home a $1.09 DVD from the clearance bin, popped popcorn, and curled up next to Louise on their threadbare couch. They laughed, they cried, they survived. And for a while, Louise believed this was enough. No fancy house, no perfect family. Just her and her mom against the world. And in that quiet bond, she felt unbreakable. He came with roses, and a smile that felt rehearsed, but warm enough to believe. Louise was 12 when her mother brought home a man named Frank. He was tall, sharply dressed, with perfectly combed hair and the kind of cologne that smelled expensive. He handed Diane a bouquet of long-stemmed red roses and handed Louise a book on astronomy. "Your mom says you love the stars," he said. "I figured you'd enjoy learning about black holes." Louise smiled politely. Frank was charming, polite, attentive. He pulled out Diane's chair, paid for dinner, asked Louise questions about school, and actually listened. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt. He made her mom laugh again. And for the first time in years, Louise saw light in Diane's eyes. So when Frank started coming over more often, staying for dinner, fixing things around the house, bringing over groceries without being asked, Louise didn't object. After all, wasn't this what her mom deserved? 6 months later, Frank proposed. The ring was big, the wedding was elegant, and they moved into his colonial-style house in the suburbs, polished floors, stainless steel appliances, a backyard bigger than their entire old neighborhood. Louise got her own room, her own computer, a new bed, new clothes, even a bookshelf lined with classic novels. On the outside, it looked like a dream come true, but sometimes dreams lie. There was something about Frank's eyes. They smiled, but only from the mouth. The gaze never softened. It calculated. Louise couldn't explain it yet, but something inside her stirred. Something primal, something small and afraid. Something whispering, "This man isn't what he seems." They didn't just move into a new house. They stepped into a silent contract, and only Frank knew the terms. The colonial-style home looked like something out of a magazine. White pillars, polished floors, a kitchen with granite countertops and a double-door fridge that purred like a luxury car. Louise's new room had fresh paint, a floral comforter, and a brand-new bookshelf already filled. Frank had thought of everything, everything except asking what they actually wanted. Diane beamed with joy. "This is a fresh start," she whispered over dinner, her eyes glistening. Louise wanted to believe her, but even on that first night, the house felt too quiet, the ceilings too high, the walls too thin, and Frank's eyes always watching. A week after moving in, Frank suggested Diane close her personal bank account. "It's just easier this way," he said, buttering his toast. "We're a family now. No more mine and yours, only ours." Diane hesitated, just for a second. Then she smiled. "You're right. It'll save on fees anyway." Louise watched the scene unfold like a movie. She couldn't pause. Something inside her twisted. Frank never raised his voice, never got angry, but somehow he always got his way. Frank didn't shout. He didn't slam doors. He didn't even forbid things outright. No, Frank was smarter than that. He didn't say, don't see your friends. He said, you know Karen talks a lot. You deserve more peace in your life. Or Susan's divorce energy isn't healthy for you, babe. You're finally in a happy home now. Diane nodded, every time. At first it was just casual distance. No more weekend brunches, no more phone calls after dinner. Then came the excuses. She's busy, she's tired, they grew apart. But Louise knew her mother wasn't just losing friends. She was being gently erased from her own life, and the money Frank didn't control it. He just offered to manage it. You don't need the stress of bills, he said one night, taking the checkbook. Let me handle it. I'm better with numbers anyway. Soon Diane didn't know how much money was in the account, didn't know which bills were paid, didn't buy anything without asking first. It wasn't a cage made of bars. It was a cage built from kindness. And Diane didn't even realize she was locked inside. Louise watched it all silently, and every time her mother said Frank's just trying to help, a cold chill ran down her spine. Because help shouldn't feel like disappearing. It wasn't a fist, it wasn't even a shove. It was a plate, and it shattered louder than any scream. Louise was 14 when it happened. It was a Saturday night. Her mom had just come back from shopping with a smile Louise hadn't seen in weeks. She had bought a sundress, light blue, soft cotton floral print. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. It was on sale, Diane said. I thought it'd be nice for the staff picnic. Frank barely glanced at it. He was pouring wine. He set his glass down too carefully. Too controlled. You bought that without asking me. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. It was only $20, Diane replied. I used my tips. I just crash. The plate hit the wall so hard it broke into 5 jagged pieces. Spaghetti sauce smeared across the wallpaper, bright red. Too much like blood. Frank didn't scream. He didn't hit her. He just stood there, shaking, eyes blazing. You are irresponsible, reckless, ungrateful. Diane said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't defend herself. She just picked up the shards, one by one, and tossed the dress in the trash. Louise stood in the hallway, frozen, watching. That was the night she realized abuse doesn't always start with bruises. Sometimes it starts with silence. She didn't run away. She just faded. Louise was 15 when she learned how to vanish without leaving. Not physically, emotionally. She joined every after-school club she could. Debate team, art club, peer tutoring, anything to avoid going home. At school, she was a star student. Straight A's, polite, quiet, always on time. Teachers loved her, classmates respected her. No one suspected a thing. But at home, she became a ghost. No eye contact, no sudden movements. She tiptoed around Frank like he was a landmine, one wrong step, and everything could explode. She kept her door closed. She ate quickly and quietly. She answered questions with short, safe replies. Yes, sir. No, sir. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She was surviving. And one night she saw it. Her mother standing in the bathroom mirror, gently dabbing concealer over a bruise blooming on her cheekbone. Diane saw her in the reflection, paused, then smiled, small, broken. I walked into a door, she said. Louise didn't reply. She didn't nod. She just stood there, staring. And in that moment, a piece of her childhood died. Because nothing is louder than the silence between a daughter who sees and a mother who pretends not to be seen. Louise had made it. Boston University. A full scholarship. A dorm room with a lock. A future that on paper looks safe. She left home with nothing but 2 suitcases and a silent prayer. Let this be the beginning of something better. And in many ways it was. She smiled more. She slept without flinching at midnight footsteps. She laughed in class. She even let herself dream again. But the past isn't a door you can shut with distance. It's a shadow that follows you even in the brightest sun. Louise still double-checked the locks at night. She still hesitated every time the phone rang. And every night, just as she drifted into sleep, a thought pierced her peace. Is Mom okay? That one question, quite persistent, kept her tethered to the life she thought she'd escaped. Because freedom isn't just about leaving. It's about healing. And healing doesn't begin until you stop pretending you're fine. Louise knew the pattern. The phone would buzz Mom on the screen, always after 11 p.m., always when the world was quiet. She'd answer with hope, "Hi, Mom," and then nothing. Just breathing, heavy, uneven, then a whisper. Everything's fine, but fine never sounded like comfort. It sounded like code, like fear dressed up in politeness, like someone was watching her mom speak. Louise learned to read between pauses, to hear the truth in what wasn't said. Frank's been tired lately meant he broke something again. We're budgeting this month meant he took her money. It's just been a rough day meant he screamed, or worse. And sometimes there was only silence, a pause too long, a click. Call ended. Louise would stare at the screen, hands shaking, a scream trapped in her throat. Because sometimes everything's fine is the loudest cry for help. It started with coffee, then long walks, then silence that didn't feel heavy. His name was Eric. He didn't ask why she jumped at loud sounds, or why she froze when he reached for her hand. He just waited, gently. When she finally told him, it wasn't with words, it was with a breakdown. One day she picked up a call from her mom. 2 sentences. Frank's coming back. Louise hung up and collapsed into tears. Eric didn't panic. He didn't say, calm down. He sat, held her, let her cry until she couldn't anymore. Then he said, let's go talk to someone, not me. Someone who helps people like you heal. And for the first time, Louise didn't say no. The office smelled like lavender. The therapist's voice was soft. And Louise learned that pain had names: anxiety, trauma, coercive control. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't crazy. She was a survivor. And Eric, he was the first person who didn't try to fix her. He just stayed. 11:47 p.m. Louise's phone buzzed on the nightstand. 1 ring, 2. She almost didn't pick up, but something told her this time was different. Louise, her mother's voice was trembling, barely a whisper. He found the flyer, the one for the women's shelter. Silence. Then I'm scared. Louise sat upright, heart slamming in her chest. The flyer she had secretly mailed at home 2 weeks ago, hidden between grocery coupons. Just in case her mother ever dared to hope. And now Frank knew. Did he hurt you? Louise's voice cracked. Where are you? Can you get out? Her mother didn't answer right away, only the sound of shuffling. Then a whisper. I locked the bathroom. He's pounding the door. Louise jumped out of bed, dialed 911, but her hands were shaking too hard to hit the numbers. Eric grabbed the phone, took over. Louise didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just kept whispering like a prayer. Please let her be okay. Please let her be okay. There was no time to think, only to act. Louise didn't sleep that night. While Eric made coffee, she sat cross-legged on the floor, scribbling on a yellow notepad with trembling hands. A bus schedule. The exact time Frank would leave for work. A safe house address near the women's shelter. She highlighted every possible detail. Louise had always been a planner, now her mother's life depended on it. You don't have to do anything heroic, she whispered into the phone later that night. Just leave when he goes. Take the blue bag I sent you last Christmas. It's still in your closet. There's cash in the lining. I already booked the Greyhound ticket. Just get on the bus. I'll be waiting at the other end. Her voice broke. Just get to me, Mom. I'll handle the rest. She didn't know if her mother would really go, but she knew what she had to do, create a world where her mom had the choice. That was the first breath of freedom. Not the escape, but the hope of it. Louise waited. Every hour felt like a decade. She kept glancing at the bus tracker, refreshing. Refreshing again. Every Greyhound that stopped in Boston brought with it a flicker of hope, but none carried her mother. Then the phone rang. She snatched it up with shaking hands, but the voice on the other end was not her mother. It sounded like her, but it was hollow, empty, like someone reading lines from a script. Hey, honey, we're fine. Frank and I talked. We're going to try marriage counseling. Louise's breath hitched. Frank wants to speak with you, the voice added. And before she could say no, his voice came through thick and smug. Louise, family is sacred, don't forget that. Louise didn't respond. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just hung up. That night, she sat in the dark. The light from her phone flickered on her face until she deleted the entire text thread with her mother. Not in anger, in resignation. She curled up on the floor, arms around her knees, as if trying to hold herself together before she fell apart completely. And then the phone screen dimmed. Darkness. Total silence. She had just turned 25. A quiet celebration, homemade cupcakes, a few books from Eric, a hug from her therapist, a FaceTime call from a friend across the country. Peace. For once, peace. But peace doesn't last long when it's built on secrets. That night, Louise fell asleep with a candle still burning beside her bed. The frosting from her last cupcake still clung to the edge of the plate on her nightstand. Then bang, bang, bang. She sat up, heart pounding. Another bang. Then the screaming started. "Louise, open the damn door. It's your father. I know you're in there." She froze. No, no, no. This couldn't be real. "You think you can lie to people about me? I will burn this down if you don't come out." Eric rushed to the door, but Louise grabbed his arm, eyes wild. "Don't. He's not here to talk." Outside, Frank's shadow loomed large in the peephole, unhinged, loud, dangerous, screaming about honor, family, loyalty, yelling that she was a traitor, that she ruined him. Inside, Louise felt like she was 7 years old again, powerless, cornered, frozen in place by a man who never had to knock before. The door didn't break, it exploded. Wood splinters shot across the floor like shrapnel. Frank stormed in with the fury of a man who had waited too long to explode. Louise didn't even have time to scream. He grabbed her by the hair, yanked her back. Then came the first punch directly into her shoulder. "You ungrateful little brat, I made you who you are." Her left arm twisted in a way it wasn't supposed to. A sickening pop. She collapsed, gasping. Blood spilled from her mouth onto the beige carpet. And her mother stood there, frozen. No scream, no rush to shield, no hands reaching out. Just silence. Like someone who had learned that intervening only made it worse. Louise, barely conscious, crawled toward the nightstand. Her fingers found the phone. She couldn't talk, but she didn't have to. Emergency shortcut. Press, hold, release. Emergency call placed. Help is on the way. Frank was still shouting. The kind of shouting that doesn't need meaning, only volume and rage. And her mother still stood there, not protecting, not stopping, just witnessing. Frank's rage hadn't burned out. If anything, it burned brighter. He grabbed Louise's arm, jerked her up. "You think 911 will save you? You think the cops care about you?" Louise couldn't speak. She didn't cry. She just stared up at him with one bloodshot eye, barely conscious. From the corner, her mother finally screamed, "Stop it, Frank! You're going to kill her!" But she still didn't move. Then a sound, the sirens, far away at first, but approaching, fast, piercing, unmistakable. Frank froze. His grip loosened. His eyes widened, not with guilt, but fear. Louise collapsed to the floor, her body folding like paper. She blinked once, twice, and then her eyes slowly closed. A single line of blood trailed from the corner of her eye down her cheek, like her eye itself was weeping. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Commands were shouted. A final roar from Frank, then a violent scuffle as he was wrestled to the ground. Her mother wailed, but Louise didn't hear it anymore. Silence, then black, white, blinding, soft beeping. Louise blinked. Her whole body screamed in pain, bruises, burned, stiffness, and something heavy wrapped around her arm. She tried to move, winced, and then she felt it, a hand holding hers. She turned her head slowly. It was Eric, eyes bloodshot, face exhausted, but his grip was warm, firm, steady. "You're safe now," his eyes said. "I'm right here." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. The door creaked open. Her mother, no makeup, no rehearsed smile, just bare skin, puffy eyes, and a heart finally cracked open. She stood by the door for a second, then stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Louise," 3 words. Simple, heavy, long overdue. "I failed you, over and over. I knew what he did. I knew you were hurting, but I was scared. And that's not an excuse." Louise didn't speak. She didn't look up, but slowly she nodded. Not forgiveness, but recognition. "I hear you." The courtroom is silent. No outbursts, no whispers, just the weight of truth. Frank sits across the room, handcuffed, slouched, that iron dominance he once wore like armor gone. Now he's just small. Louise takes the stand. Bandages still wrap her arms. Bruises peek through her blouse. But her eyes steady, unflinching. "Am not here for revenge. Am here because I survived." Gasps. A hush falls again. Someone out there is listening. A daughter, a mother, a wife. And they need to know silence won't save them. Truth will. Then the audio plays. Frank's voice, booming and vile. "You think you're better than me. I raised you, Louise. Am your father smack?" Gasp. Whimpering sobs. Louise stares him down. And Frank looks away. For the first time, no control, no power, just justice. In the audience, her mother grips the seat. She doesn't speak, doesn't weep, but a single tear rolls down her cheek. It's not grief, it's liberation. 15 years in prison. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom firm's final freeing. Frank stood motionless. No outburst, no growl of control. He turned to glance at Louise, but she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The system finally spoke the truth she'd been screaming in silence for years. The cell door clanged shut behind him, and in that stillness, the weight lifted. Louise walked out of the courtroom, not as a victim, not as someone broken, but as a survivor. Head held high. For the first time, her steps didn't shake. Her mother stood waiting by the exit, eyes red, face aged, but her hand reached out trembling and found Louise's. Together, they stepped into the light. The sun touched their faces. Not too bright, just warm, like a welcome, like permission to begin again. Louise paused, looking up at the sky. I made it. Justice was served. But Louise knew justice alone doesn't rebuild lives. That takes shelter. That takes safety. That takes someone saying, you can start again. She remembered her mother. If there had been somewhere to go, she wouldn't have stayed that long. So Louise built that somewhere. A rundown 2-story house on the outskirts of the city. Peeling paint, broken steps, rusted mailbox. But to Louise, it was sacred ground. She named it Breakthrough. She poured her savings, her energy, her pain into its walls. Each room a promise. Room of freedom, room of listening, room of safety. Breakthrough became more than a shelter. It became a place where women exhale without trembling, where children laughed for the first time in months, where she had a name, not just his wife. For decades, she existed in the shadows, not choosing the lipstick, not choosing the books, not even choosing herself. Now at 50, she blooms. Her mornings start with chamomile tea and the rustle of pages. A romance novel rests on the windowsill, bookmarked at the chapter titled The Woman Who Chose Herself. In her tiny garden, she bends over marigolds and tulips like they were lifelong friends. You know, she told Louise one morning, he never let me plant anything. Said flowers were a waste of space. Now that little patch of soil is a rainbow of reclamation. She no longer flinches at the knock on the door. She no longer lowers her gaze when someone raises their voice. She walks slowly but with her chin high. A soft spotlight spills across the stage. Louise steps forward in a cream blazer, simple, strong. She carries no script, just scars and courage. Below her, a sea of faces, women who've been hurt, hidden, unheard. But tonight they are seen. I used to think I was weak or stupid, or maybe I deserved it. She pauses. No tears, only truth. But the truth is, I was just someone who loved the wrong person for too long. Silence sweeps the room. A hand is held. A head bows in quiet sobs. You can't save someone who isn't ready to be saved, but you can be the place they come home to when they are. Louise's eyes scan the front row. Her mother sits there, red lipstick, bold as ever, her hands trembling around a folded handkerchief. Behind every closed door, there's a story we rarely hear. And Louise's story reminds us of something we too often forget. You can survive things that were meant to break you. And when you do, you don't just save yourself. You light the way for others. Not everyone is ready to be saved, but we can all be a safe place for someone to return to when they are. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Being a victim isn't the end of your story, it's a chapter. And scars, they're not shameful. They're proof you lived and chose to keep going. If this story touched something in you, if you believe every woman deserves to be heard, if you believe in healing, strength, and second chances, subscribe to Through Her Eyes right now. Here we tell the stories others are too afraid to tell. We speak for the silenced. We honor the survivors. Every subscription is more than a number. It says, I see you. I believe you. I stand with you. And maybe, just maybe, your click will be the hope someone else needs to finally walk out of the dark.